To this fireside chat on lessons from defending against Russia with Margus Tsahkna, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Estonia. My name is Matthew Kranig, and I'm the Vice President and Senior Director of the Atlantic Council's Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. The event today is hosted jointly by the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center, Europe Center, and Transatlantic Security Initiative. We meet today at a historic inflection point for European security and the Transatlantic Alliance, almost 4 years into the largest military conflict in Europe since World War II. 300 days into President Trump's return to the White House, US-led talks to end Russia's war have stalled, and Vladimir Putin continues to target Ukrainian cities with daily missile and drone attacks, while seeking to undermine Allied support with other forms of hybrid warfare. Estonia is on the front lines of Russia's campaign of hybrid aggression against Europe. 2 months ago, 3 Russian fighter jets illegally entered Estonian airspace for a total of 12 minutes in one of the most brazen violations of NATO airspace seen so far. Dealing with Russian provocations is nothing new for the Baltic states. In 2007, Estonia was the first NATO ally to suffer directly from a large-scale Russian cyber attack against critical government institutions, banks, and media outlets. And yet, with a population of 1.3 million, Estonia has developed a remarkable resilience and continues to thrive and succeed in spite of the threats and hostility of its much larger eastern neighbor. Today, Estonia stands as a model ally and leader within both NATO and the European Union, having committed to increase its defense spending to more than 5% of GDP in 2026. Further, the Estonian government and civil society have mobilized to support Ukraine, providing assistance worth more than 1.4% of Estonia's GDP. To discuss Tallinn's perspective on Allied support for Ukraine and raising the cost of Russian aggression, we are honored to be joined today by Minister Tsahkna, who has served as Estonia's foreign minister since April 2023. In his career as a member of the Estonian parliament, he has also served previously as Minister of Defense and Minister of Social Protection. Today's conversation will be moderated by Vivian Salama, staff writer for The Atlantic. There will be time for audience Q&A toward the end of today's event. So thank you all again very much for joining, and now I'd like to turn the floor to Vivian. Vivian, over to you.
Thanks so much, Matthew, and it's always great to be here at the Atlantic Council. Thank you to Minister Tsahkna.
Yes.
How's that?
This is perfect.
Oh my God, I'm so happy.
Normally it takes like a couple of years in Estonia to pronounce my name.
I've been practicing. I want to, we have a number of things that I want to cover before we get to the audience Q&A, a number of very serious topics that we should cover. But first I wanted to flag that on the 11th of November, your Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, gave an interview to Russian media, I'm not sure if you caught that, where he unleashed a barrage of accusations against the Baltic states specifically. He accused Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania of harboring, quote, Russophobia, promoting anti-Russian sentiments, and mistreating Russian speakers. He also alleged that the Baltic states had violated agreements with Russia and painted them as pawns of the United Kingdom. He said, according to Lavrov, he said that they lost their sovereignty and were no longer truly European. How do you read the pretext conditions for a possible future attack on Estonia or the Baltic states, and what do you make of his comments?
I'm not reading these comments from Lavrov because it's old news already. More than 20 years. We are a Russophobic nation from the border of Russia, but actually it's not true. We know that. And me and many other Baltic foreign politicians, we have called Russophobics already years, but unfortunately we were right about Russia. So what we see now is full-scale war in the middle of Europe, and it started already 2008 in Georgia. It went again on 2014 in Ukraine, and we said already then that Russia is an aggressive country, but unfortunately in Europe as well we were called Russophobic.
So it's nothing new?
It's not nothing new, but I can say that the facts are proving, and I'm not happy about this, that we were right, unfortunately. Because now we have a full-scale atrocities war, breaking all international rules by Russia, and as it was mentioned as well already, more than 3 years, or the third year war in Ukraine. So, but I'm not commenting, what Lavrov says. He needs to say that because they're not doing well. Because after so long war, Putin has not gained any strategic breakthrough on the battlefield. His economy is running out. He has been losing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people's lives. He's continuing killings. And he's not changing the goal. That's our main concern. He was offered by President Trump, to start negotiations about the peace, but actually he refused, and he just played with President Trump, with all of us, to gain more time, but also putting more pressure on Ukraine. What we see now is full-scale, attacks during the nights against energy infrastructure, against civil people. So he's trying to steal the meaning peace, the word of us. So if Putin says peace, he means more war. So that's why I think that Lavrov is trying again to accuse Baltic states, but actually we don't need to even comment that. We need to face the facts, and the fact is that Russia is an aggressive country, and Putin is fulfilling the plan. He was actually publishing it already 2007 during the Munich Security Conference, and it was the elimination of the root causes. And the root causes from him was actually the collapse of the Soviet Union. So he's fulfilling this goal. But unfortunately, till today, he has not changed the course. So we need to put more pressure on Russia. This is the only way out.
Before I continue, it's interesting you mentioned that you don't see any strategic gains by the Russian military in Ukraine. But people I talk to here in Washington and elsewhere, especially in Brussels, are concerned by some of the territorial gains that they've acquired in just the last week or two.
Yes, everybody is looking into some details, I can say. Of course, it's important that Russia is not gaining any more territories, but if we see the so-called success of Russian troops within the last year, so it's maybe less than 1% of Ukraine territory. This is reality. So there has not been any strategic breakthrough on the battlefield. There has not been any strategic breakthrough on the political level as well, globally. The other way around, to be honest, instead of 6 days so-called special operation, now Russia is stuck into this war, running out of resources, economically, and as well politically. I see that Europe is doing much more, really. We have adopted the 19th sanction package. We are very close to start using the Russian frozen assets. We put probably on the tariffs to Russian, Belarusian export, energy export to Europe. If we have something else, there are some figures. Also, European Union has decided to cut 100% of energy import from Russia for the year 27. It's really a hard thing. And also President Trump has put now the sanctions on two main energy companies. And now today I heard that President Trump announced that Senator Graham's bill would pass. So he has actually, Putin, got more pressure than ever before. And I think that this is the right strategy.
Matthew, in his introduction, mentioned the unprecedented 12-minute incursion by Russian jets on Estonian airspace. We also know of an incursion of 20 Russian drones over Polish airspace. Russia denied the violation of Estonia's airspace, claiming that its jets were flying over international waters en route to an airbase from northwest Russia into Kaliningrad. What's your assessment of that incident now that there's been a moment to kind of let the dust settle and investigate?
Yes, it was 19th of September this year when Russian free fighter jets who were fully armed entered to Estonian airspaces as well, NATO airspace for 12 minutes. And I can say that if these fighter jets could turn left, to south, it could have been taken like maybe 10 seconds crossing Tallinn as a NATO capital. It was the most brutal and most violent violation of the NATO airspace that NATO has been experienced. And we took it very seriously, of course. NATO reacted in a very solid ways because everything was under the NATO control. But also we called the Article 4 consultations amongst the NATO. Mm-hmm. So, and also we called in the United Nations Security Council meeting. And this Security Council meeting happened exactly the first day when all the world leaders gathered to New York. And of course, the Russian representative said that it's a fake news, nothing happened. But I had an opportunity to show everybody the pictures of the planes and also the radar pictures. So it's typical.
So why doesn't it invoke Article 5 for folks who don't follow these issues closely enough and they hear so much about Article 5. Why didn't it trigger an Article 5?
Because it was not immediate threat against us, but also, there are lots of, discussions later whether we should shoot these planes down or not. But President Trump was as well asked in a press conference whether we need to do it or not, and he was very clear. And I think that this language is something that Putin understands. That next time they're coming, and if we have this real threat, then we will shoot them down, and we could shoot them down as well this time.
From where we sit here in Washington, that was extraordinary from President Trump to say that.
Exactly, but he said it, and I think that this is the language that Putin understands. So what Putin is doing, he's testing us. He's testing our readiness, he's testing our military readiness, but also he's testing our unity. And I think for Putin it's most important to divide Europe and the US from each other. But actually, as it normally happens with Putin, the results were different. He wanted to get less NATO in our region, but we called in as well the Eastern Sentry mission together with Poland. So now our military people, they have reviewed the protocols, the reaction more rapid, and also we have more capabilities in the eastern flank. So it's a paradigm because Putin blaming NATO coming too close, but as a Putin's behavior results, we have now Finland and Sweden in NATO. We have stronger NATO than ever. We have a NATO which is investing 5% of GDP, as agreed in this summer in The Hague. So it's totally the other way around.
Is it possible that the incursion was a mistake by the Russian military, and doesn't matter for that matter?
Yes, you're right, it doesn't matter, but it was not, of course, a mistake if you come from 12 minutes, and also if you see the details. So the Finnish planes went up before, and all the communication really happened, so they knew exactly where they are. But even if it was a mistake, can you imagine how crazy it is that we let it happen, that Russian planes are flying like 12 minutes in NATO territory, and we say that, sorry, it was a mistake and we are not doing anything. So it doesn't matter, was it a mistake or not? It was not a mistake, definitely, because it never happens like this. But I think that Putin is now taking it very seriously.
I was going to actually ask you, that have you seen any evidence that the Russians are making any adjustments to prevent something like this from happening again, given the response that NATO had?
We haven't witnessed more these brutal violations of the NATO airspace. Of course, I do hope that it worked, but I'm not naive. It will happen maybe again, but let's see. Our response will be very clear on that. But we see many other hybrid attacks. I hate the word hybrid because these are attacks. We see it not in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania only. We see them in the middle of Europe. We see the Munich airport, Copenhagen, many other places. Today in the morning as well, the railway was destroyed in Poland, the railway which is going to Ukraine, to support Ukraine from the western part of the world. We don't know exactly the details yet. So many of these kind of things always and every day is happening now in Europe. So mainly behind that is Russia.
So Estonia is building a fence along its border with Russia and building anti-tank dishes and bunkers in preparation for any potential conflict with Moscow. I hope that it doesn't come to that. It certainly can't hurt to take those kinds of precautions, but is it enough, or what more does Estonia then need to defend itself?
Actually, we agreed 2 years ago in Vilnius NATO summit the new defense plans, the regional defense plans. And for us, it was very important that NATO changed the concept. And the concept is that NATO is not giving away any meters or inch or whatever NATO territories. So we're going to act from the first second. It means as well we bring the defensive war in the middle of and the deep to Russia. We take down everything which is really supporting as well the attacks against NATO. So that's why we are now fulfilling these caps. And the defense lines, the drone walls and everything what we built, this is just preparation for that and mainly for deterrence. But we need to understand as well in Estonia that we have 200 kilometers territorial depth from the border to the sea. So we cannot wait when once Russia will invade and then we will have a victorious war to conquest back the land of Estonian territories. We witness from Ukraine what happens on these territories, and there won't be Estonian nation left anymore. So that's why we we go in if there is need for that, but it's a deterrence. So I do hope that Putin will think many, many, many times before he's doing anything against this eastern flank.
Speaking of that border, President Trump and Putin in recent weeks have been trading threats to restart nuclear testing. We heard President Putin, of course, boasted about testing the Poseidon. I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that right, the nuclear-powered missile in late October. President Trump, a few days later, declared he would start U.S. testing after a 3-decade moratorium. The only remaining nuclear arms control agreement between the U.S. and Russia, the New START treaty, expires on February 4th. You are on Russia's doorstep. This must all be alarming, not just the language coming out of Moscow, but from Washington as well.
It's not alarming, actually. I'm
Why?
honest. Because we are the people, we are living in the neighboring of Russia, and we don't believe that Putin never use the nuclear weapon, even tactically. It will be a political suicide for him. And he's a very rational guy.
You don't think he's too desperate?
No, he's playing with our fears. He's playing with the Western world fears. And the fear of escalation of the nuclear power is something that, even far you are from Russia, you believe it more. And of course, historically, I think that US has this experience in Cuba and so on. But we don't take it seriously. But it's always interesting that if Putin is losing the ground, or if he's losing the good position, he's always finding something, putting on the table as a nuclear threat or a new level of developments. All this new stuff appeared when actually we put more sanctions on Russia. President Trump announced as well more pressure on Russia, and his positions are weaker. So he's threatening. And I think that President Trump made the right decision actually to increase from his side as well, this level about testing or showing as well the capabilities. Because I'm very clear to say US people as well and the west part of Europe that we in the Nordics and this region, we don't believe that Putin is going to use the tactical nuclear weapon because he is going to lose even the China support of that. So he's just playing with the fears. So let's continue to put the pressure on Putin and bring him actually to negotiate about the peace and the conditions, because he's not willing to do it right now. He knows that we are afraid as a Western part of the world. We are not afraid. We don't need to be afraid. And I can assure you, as Estonian Foreign Minister who is living there, that there is no reason to be afraid. Let's do it.
You mentioned the China element, which I definitely want to get to shortly, but you reminded me with your response from my many trips to Ukraine, especially in 2022, where they would constantly tell us, we know our adversary better than Washington, better than anyone else. We have lived with the Russians and we know them very well. Obviously, Estonia has a very deep-rooted history as well. But is there any risk of sort of complacency? And especially, again, I'm repeating the question, if Putin becomes more desperate, even if he loses Chinese support, at the end of the day, a lot of these issues are existential for him. Is there any logic or diplomacy in existential way of thinking?
We need to take nuclear deterrence very seriously, of course, but we cannot take it from the position of fear. So and we need to understand as well that Putin is a very rational guy. And I've said many times that the only guy who left Kremlin to retirement was Khrushchev. All the other guys, they're living normally in the box. So he doesn't want to leave the Kremlin in the box. He was actually discussing how long actually the human being can live, and also he's planning 150 years of life for him and some other dictators in the world. But it's a joke. What I want to say is, of course, we need to take it seriously. Of course, we need to face it and so on. But we need to do it from the strength. We need to do it from the strong positions, and not to be afraid all the time.
As someone who covered the first Trump White House, second Trump White House, and his campaign, I have been hearing for years now, but especially those around the president currently, about the greater need for burden sharing, the greater need for Europe to defend itself. Obviously, President Biden also spoke about those issues as well, but anyone who were to succeed President Trump in the GOP would likely take a harder stance on these issues. What does that mean for the Baltic states in particular when you are emphasizing this element of burden sharing and that Europe must need to do more? Will the Baltic states be okay?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and I can say that we are very happy about this, and we are talking about burden sharing already years. And I was defense minister when President Trump first time entered to the White House, and I remember very much the first NATO summit he participated in Brussels. And I think that this situation, that this momentum was more critical as it was today or this year, because really Europe didn't invest as much as even was promised, about 2%. So. And we did it already a lot on the eastern flank, Baltics and Poland and some other countries. So it's clear that it has been, through the decades, out from balance. But also the question for me was not always only about investments, but also the mentality that Europe cannot be as an old fat cat who is just waiting that somebody is coming to pour the milk into the can, and then we decide whether to drink it or not. But Russia is a threat, and also since 2008 in Georgia, and then I mentioned many other times, we, in Europe as a whole, we could understand that we take the first responsibility. We need to understand that we are more responsible for that. And now it's there. And I saw as well that the German new government is really doing a lot and changed the dynamics in this old part of Europe a lot now.
How so?
Now they made a historical decision this summer to invest to defense, to create the most capable military forces in Europe. And if you think about the German history after the Second World War, so it was impossible even to think about it. So this change is there, and also money and full-scale investments. So, and also there are no arguments for other European countries not to follow that. Everybody can say that, okay, you, Baltics and Poland and Finland and Nordics, you have a common border and you need to do more. But now you see actually Europe which is putting real money in. The question is it too late? I don't know. I do hope that not too late, but it's better. And the good thing is that now President Trump has said very clearly as well that the US and his administration is committed to NATO. And I think one is practicality is what we saw, but also the communication towards, Russia and whoever in the world, that NATO is united. This is something that Putin wants to test many times. So let's see what is happening. But this, if you ask the question from our perspective, of course we are happy that we put now all this money in. Estonia is putting next year 5.3% of GDP already. And our people ask, why not 8? And we said that, okay,
Is that realistic?
We can do it, but the case is that we can put even like 20% of as Estonia, but it's a question of NATO. Finally, we're talking about nominal figures, and we need to actually fulfill these gaps, what we have based on the NATO defense plans. And of course, GDP is an honest figure. It shows the pressure on your economy and society, but the case is not how much Estonia is putting on. We fulfill totally these promises very quickly, but important is that this commitment was agreed amongst the NATO friends, and it's not anymore the topic.
Certainly, though, the political headwinds in this country must be eye-opening. I mean, NATO, for as much as we talk about burden sharing, is still enormously reliant on Washington for many, many things, including financial backing and defense spending and things like that. Obviously, Vice President Vance could be the successor to President Trump. It's too early to tell, but it seems that could be a major possibility. He has been very outspoken as far as his views on Ukraine. Of course, we saw the extraordinary meeting in the Oval Office in February with President Zelensky. Even President Trump is getting criticized by his own base for neglecting the America First mantra of focusing on the homeland and not supporting foreign allies as much. That must be alarming, where you sit in Tallinn, to hear all of this, to see these changes in our political system, to see the growing discontent by both parties, where they're focused on affordability, healthcare, things that are more domestic related. How does that impact you, and where do you think it goes from here?
But it is happening everywhere. If you have democracy, that there will be, and there are many topics which are much more like domestic, and people asking why they are not earning more, or why the social system is not working so efficiently, or education is not as good as they wish. But of course, it's different administration now, and everybody in Europe understands as well that transatlantic relations are strong, but they are conditional. And this is exactly what we need to take from the Trump's administration, that Europe must take more responsibilities. We must negotiate our positions, and we will need to put the skin in the game if we're talking about the security in Europe as well. If we're talking now about the support to Ukraine, the Europe is doing the job in the meaning of financially, and we are buying military equipment from US to send to Ukraine. So we need to understand that it's not granted 100% doing nothing. You need to do your job. So it's one thing. And the second is that, of course, communication is changing. And I have experience from President Trump's first administration. And I think that I'm saying to my people in Estonia and also in Europe, let's focus on what we can do. Let's focus about our own decisions, what we can do more in Europe, what we can do more in Estonia, and what is our part to find a solution. So, and also communication is important with President Trump and the administration. Because with the weak Europe, I think that there is no prosperous future for US as well. So the European Union is the main trade partner, actually, the big market. Mm-hmm. And I just came back from China. I was there last week. I can say that we all witnessed the last steps that China was able to do about rare earth metals and magnets restrictions of export. So I think that we need to all together focus on actually where is the competition. We don't need to compete between Europe and US. The world will be more divided between China, Russia, and some other countries, and then the democratic part of the world. So this kind of reality, it hit as well, I think, US people, this opportunity that all this monopoly about rare earth and magnets and everything is actually under the China control. We need to take it very seriously, because the message I got there was that they're ready to do it if they need. And this time they're ready to do it. So these are the existential questions for all of us, our economies. So we need to bring us together more.
I'm happy that you came full circle back to the China question and your trip, because I do want to ask you that before we turn questions over to the audience. China has made clear that it is open to economic partnerships with the West. It hasn't come too far in its negotiations with the U.S., but certainly, they're trying. They have to cooperate at some level. But militarily and otherwise, there's this question still about its support for Russia, and its place in sort of this effort. You talked earlier about the nuclear issue. This effort to, bring down the temperature a little bit with regard to the conflict in Eastern Europe. What did you take away from your trip to have any assurances that the Baltic states and Europe in general can turn to can turn to China, that China is on its side, and that it does not want further conflict?
Of course, I said very clearly that China is the main enabler for the Russian to wage the war against Ukraine. Economically as well, technologically, we find more and more technology in dual-use drones and so on. Of course, the foreign minister said that this is a free market; they cannot do anything, and they are not part of this war. But we understand that China has this 1,000-year plan, and the economical development is something they are, relying on. And also they have prepared for this new level of technologies about rare earth metals and magnets and all this already decades. And now the situation is that we are all dependent on that. So this is a wake-up call. I talked to many US politicians and business people as well. This is a real wake-up call as well in Europe. But again, Estonia will probably play here a role, because already years we produce in Estonia 3% of all the rare earth metals, but 92% around that is produced in China. So actually we are producing in Estonia most of the rare earth metals outside from China.
Largest factory in Europe, is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, and also we have resources and technologies for that. This is actually one reason I'm here as well, to talk about this. So we need to understand where will be the red lines, in a meaning between whom. So, but of course, China will remain the big economy. We will all having relations with China. But the question is, are we dependent or not in these strategic fields? And I see as well that U.S. is taking now the leadership on that, and I hope to see the cooperation between Europe and U.S. about this.
Yeah, a topic that I'm personally very interested in. Thank you for that. I'm going to go to some of the audience questions here, and I will attempt to do this technological. Let's see. All right, we got it. So the first question we have here from a person who didn't provide their name is, please speak of the importance of obtaining energy resources from non-Russian companies and the feasibility of Estonia and other countries doing that. What percentage of Russia's war machine is thought to depend on the energy-produced funds?
Of course, now we are talking about the sanctions against the third countries and the secondary sanctions, and we have been called up on as well European Union to act like this. Already in 19th package, what was adopted a month ago, we are targeting the third countries, companies which are having business with Russia, mainly on energy. And as well, let's see now what is going to happen with the President Trump's announcement about the Graham bill and so on. But of course, we need to find the ways that Russian war machine won't be supported by other economies as well. So we decided already years ago that Estonia and Baltic states, we are cutting out ourselves from the dependence on the Russian energy. And also now in the European Union, we decided that 2027 it will happen. Of course, China is, as we mentioned before, the big country. But if we put the pressure together on China and asking them to buy less oil and gas from Russia, it helps a lot. But we need to cooperate on that. Of course, it is impossible to control the all change globally, but chains. I mean, as a chain, but. We can do it, and I think that Russia is deeply concerned about this pressure.
Absolutely. We're going to take another question from Eric Pensa. Did I do this right? Okay, there we go. NATO seems to be going in two opposite directions, those nations that are spending significant funds on strengthening their military deterrence and those who are not. Will NATO be able to go forward with all of its current members and existing voting rules, or can that change?
Finally, what we have, everybody's talking about this GDP percentage, like 5% or 2% it was before. But if anybody knows about military planning and the real capability targets, so these are even more important. And we are focusing on that. So at the same time, we agreed in The Hague, the 5% target, of course, we do it very rapidly. Some countries say 2023 or 25, whatever. It's not as quick as we all need to do. But the most important is actually how we, in practical life, fulfill the plans what we have agreed on military level. These targets must achieve the targets must be ready quicker, and also this is the reality. And in that regard, all the nations are putting their efforts in. But yeah, the question is a good question. Of course, we expect that all members of the NATO will be committed to the agreements what we have made.
Okay, so Philip Saeb, ready? Go live, sorry. From Estonia's point of view, what would be satisfactory action by Russia to secure peace? Is there anything short of withdrawal of all Russian troops from Ukraine acceptable?
Of course, but one thing I say that Estonia will never recognize de facto or de jure change of the territorial integrity of the territories using by force. U.S. was one of the countries which never recognized the Soviet occupation in Baltic states. Actually, one fact nobody knows is that actually China did the same thing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I said it to Chinese foreign minister for the beginning that actually thank you for that you never recognized the Soviet occupation in the Baltic states, but you are now the permanent member of United Nations Security Council, and you need to follow that as well about territorial integrity principle and sovereignty principle. And it's hard to say no. But of course, we need to push Russia back to Russia, and of course, it would be great once to have democratic Russia live in peace They have all the resources. They could be a very good partner for all the world, but unfortunately, I don't see it in the near future, and that's the reason.
No, I mean, do you worry about war fatigue in Russia, in Ukraine itself? We've seen that President Zelensky has imposed new measures for troops to kind of do rotations and things like that to try to keep them fresh and alert and things like that and keep morale up. Is that a risk for the region if, for Eastern Europe, if Ukrainian morale continues to go down, if they cannot secure or recapture these territories?
If Putin can declare the victory, it's very bad for all of us, because he will be more encouraged to continue. Now he's stuck into Ukraine. But I was defense minister 2016-17. We saw the other side of the Baltic countries' borders, 120,000 troops ready to go within 48 hours. These troops are literally dead, sent to Ukraine, gone. It's empty,
right.
The other side of the border. So for us and all of us, I think it is important that the peace, if it's coming in Ukraine, will be long and just. And long, I mean, as well, they're guaranteed by the security guarantees, which are working. So that's why Estonian government, even we are the bordering country of Russia, we decided already in March this year that if the security guarantees will be given, and if they are not the NATO full membership, what we support. So we are ready to send as well the boots on the ground commitment if the allies and the coalition of the willing will do that. So this is the most important part of the peace. Everybody wants to have a peace, and Ukraine. I was in Ukraine just a couple of weeks ago, and I met as well President Zelensky. So they have said very clearly that they are ready for peace talks, but the first step must come from Russian side about the ceasefire, and as well they are ready to start negotiations on this control line that we have right now. So, but there is no willingness from the Putin side. So that's why we need to put the pressure on. But at the same time, yes, we need to work on this European security architecture, what will be after if the peace is coming.
I just want to clarify, because you said, Putin, if Putin declares victory, obviously, what does that look like? It's taking over Kyiv, no? Would be for him. And we just saw a barrage of missiles hit Kyiv recently. Do you think there's still a risk that Kyiv could fall?
Not now. I don't see any like military risk about that. But I suggest everybody to go and visit Ukraine and actually to understand how hard it is. One is the military combat and protect the line, but actually they are under constant crazy attacks against civilians every night. Every night. So this is a psychological terror as well. But declare victory from Putin's side, it depends on us as well what we say, what is the peace finally. As I said, Putin is stealing the meaning of the word peace. If he's talking about the peace, he means totally different thing as we talk about peace, so Ukrainians. So we need to understand that whatever happens, if Putin has an opportunity to declare this is the victory of Russia, so he will continue. It's not a question about territories for him. It's about the European security architecture. It's about the territorial integrity principle. It's about actually the location of the US troops in Europe. I'm very happy that the US has now at least decided to keep the forces of the Baltic states in Poland. So it's very important because Putin is using all these narratives. If something happens, they will say he's victorious. So this is a main narrative.
I want to give the remaining time to people in the audience here with us who have, maybe Ambassador, how are you? Nice to see you.
Minister, two questions. One is frozen Russian assets.
Yeah.
EU has made some progress on that. Can you say if that's going to succeed? And the second is, you just mentioned Estonia's willingness to put troops on the ground as a security guarantee. Several people have suggested the Europeans and the US backing of that should not wait for a ceasefire. What's your thought on that?
About Russian frozen assets, we have been leading this question to use the Russian frozen assets already 3 years. And half a year ago, nobody wanted to talk about this seriously in Europe, but now we're very close to have this solution. I was just last Thursday in Berlin, and I met my counterpart and many other people it was very important that Germany has been decided to move forward, because before that, the last government was reluctant on that question. So the main question is now, how can we formalize the guarantees for Belgian government? Because Belgium holds most of these assets. We're talking about 140, 160 billion euros we can actually use as a guarantee for the long-term loan to Ukraine. And I do hope that this decision will be made this December amongst the European leaders. But also we need this cooperation amongst at least the G7 countries. There are some assets in US as well. I know that it's around like 20 billion maybe. But the main question is the message, not only money, but the message as well to Putin that there will be no questions about fundings for Ukraine. Is it like military level, or is it like the recovery process? So I do hope that it will happen. So we'll push it heavily. And the second question was about
troops on the ground.
Troops on the ground. Estonia has a very clear position that the most efficient and working security guarantee for Ukraine, but also our region, is the full membership of NATO for Ukraine. Because it's not only how to stabilize the situation in Ukraine, but also Ukraine army is one of the most experienced probably in Europe, and the largest as well, to secure our region. So this is, it will be work all together, one for all for one principle. But we don't see politically it will happen. So we must now prepare for the momentum when the ceasefire is coming and the peace process is starting. And from this point, we as a coalition of the willing should give the security guarantee for Ukraine. And what I mean by them is the same principle Article 5 is working. It means as well the boots on the ground. The question is in what scale, what level, in what conditions, it's not still there. I don't see that we have the capabilities as all us together to send full-scale troops. But as well, Estonia as a member of NATO got 2017, the deterrence capabilities from different NATO parties. Estonia as British and French troops, they are integrated to our troops. And Putin knows exactly that if something happens in the first hours, there will be dead bodies from the British and French army as well. And this is very much working deterrence, because these are the two nuclear countries as well. So this is the concept of that. I don't know what finally will happen, but in Europe, we need to understand that we as Europeans, we must put the skin in the game, taking responsibilities, and then it will work. But yeah, it's very complicated, of course.
We have about a minute left, so I just want to take one more question. I think there's a gentleman right here in the front row.
Dear Minister, you were talking already about the funding commitments of NATO nations, and as you said, it's proportional to GDP. But the requirements of Estonia, Baltic states, and other neighboring countries are way larger proportionally to the GDP. So the challenge is larger for Estonia than, for example, for Spain. So how do you think this issue can be addressed? What's Estonia's vision? Some people suggest there would be some regional alliances, larger countries like Poland can extend their umbrellas, or Finland may extend their umbrellas, maybe utilize Ukrainian capabilities in this sense. So what do you think about this?
We are all together NATO, and of course we understand from where the threat is coming. Of course, Spain has another threat, because NATO must work like 360 degrees. But if you're talking about military invasion opportunities in the future, it is probably Russia, who is a main threat, and also eastern flank of NATO is taking main responsibilities. That's why the military people, they have made these defense plans. They're based on the real situation and perspective as well, what may happen. And that's why, of course, it is important to follow these GDP figures. This 5% is very important. But as I mentioned before as well, being as well the Minister of Defense and look into these plans. So it's very important that we are following the capability targets, what has been agreed between the allies on military level. So everybody is taking their own responsibilities. We're doing our. We have no fighters jets. We never, in the future, will buy them, because we have air policing mission. It's rotating amongst the NATO members. As well, the Baltic Sea is now NATO lake after Finland and Sweden joined. This is a very specific, responsibilities. Who is doing what? US is taking responsibilities as well from long-range capabilities from the North Sea and so on. It all works together as a machine. So it's a NATO. So, it's, of course, lots of communication about that which country is doing what. But in real life, NATO is not working like this, that every nation is doing their own full-scale, capabilities, and then we have like more than 30 of them together. No. So that's why this is not a relevant discussion if you would like to look into the capabilities. So, but the plans are there. They're good plans, I can say. And also we know the gaps and we know the time frames. And also I can say you that don't worry, Narva won't be next, or whoever, Estonia and Baltics will not be next, because Russia has no capabilities right now. They're preparing, they're investing more heavily than ever before to infrastructure the other side of the borders, mainly to north, because Finland and Sweden joined the NATO. We see that they have willingness for that in the future, but now the other side of the border is empty. So we have time for preparations and deterrence. I do hope that it will work well. And the stories about the green little men coming in, this hybrid stuff, I can say very clearly to some friends in Germany who's like sharing this kind of analysis about green men coming in, and Narva is a city on the border of Estonia and Russia. Very clear answer is we shoot them down for the first second. The green men will be dead. So we have this capabilities, don't worry.
What a note to end it on. We barely scratched the surface. You'll have to come back and visit us very soon.
I will come soon.
Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to the Atlantic
Thank you.
Council for hosting us. Thank you.
Thank you.